All right, hello and welcome everyone to today's presentation by Malcolm Mathias. Today's presentation, welcome whenever you're ready. You are good to share your screen and we'll go ahead and get things started. Once again, if we have any questions, you can ask throughout the session, but we'll look to answer those at the end. Take it away.
Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me at 2 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. By way of introduction, I collected both stamps and coins earlier in my life. I became a scales collector in retirement. I was invited to talk about why I went where for this Maranville tour in USA. The finer details of the Maranville census are already available on the Newman Numismatic Portal. I'm going to talk for about 45 minutes and then welcome your comments and questions for 15 minutes at the end of this presentation. You may wish to note the slide numbers for your questions. Let's begin by setting the scene with some basic descriptions of the three Maranville coin testers. Scales have been a part of history for thousands of years. Scales have been designed and made for a wide variety of purposes: postal, miners, kitchen, bathroom, baby, egg, meat, and coin scales, to name a few. They have been designed with a variety of mechanisms. I like to research each of my scales as I add them to my collection. I have a growing collection of coin testers, also known as counterfeit coin detectors or CCDs. I bought an 1857 Maranville coin tester on eBay in 2017. You pull the sliding beam out to a marked position to test the weight of the coin. Coin diameter is checked against marks on the circular pan. Thickness is checked against the small angular lips at the front of the pan. Maranville's second version, the 1860 improved pocket coin tester, is quite rare. The 1860 also uses a sliding beam to test the weight of both gold and silver coins, both American and foreign. The coin thickness is gauged in the V slots and the scale of diameter runs along the length. I do not own an 1860 improved pocket coin tester. The sliding beam, common to both the 1857 and 1860 coin testers, was replaced with a weighted dial in the 1878 dial coin tester. The 1878 dial coin tester was designed to test only American coins, both gold and silver. The user could check the coin diameter, coin thickness, and coin weight for all American gold and silver coins. The circular pan of the 1857 coin tester is divided into 4 segments. The known correct diameter for each coin is marked with an arc in the appropriate segment. The coin being tested sits in the V shape of the angular lips at the front that are used to gauge the thickness of the coin being tested. The sliding beam used to set the weight for each coin is inscribed underneath with a lot of information. Why did Maranville go the long distance from Ohio to Worcester, Massachusetts, to get Charles E. Staples to make his coin testers? Note the number 39 on the back of the pan and the number 39 on the top of the sliding beam. What do the matching numbers mean? The Newman and Malus book shows that Harvey Maranville invented a new and useful improvement in scales, but shared the patent rights with Samuel D. Stewart. There are no maker's marks. Who was Samuel D. Stewart? What was his role in the business opportunity? How many were made? Newman and Malus mention an example in a black box. The fragments of information inscribed on any antique scale provide a starting point, but there are always questions to be answered. The answers to some of these questions are already inscribed on the Maranville Coin Testers, so this research had a flying start. What research resources are available and where? The starting point for my research is always the 42 Years of Equilibrium, the quarterly magazine of the International Society of Antique Scale Collectors. The Equilibrium Index lists a number of articles by George Malus in 1985, 1986 and 1996, which described American CCDs, including Maranville's coin testers, but there was little more than good descriptions. The substance of those earlier Equilibrium articles by Malus was repeated in the 1999 Newman and Malus book titled US Coin Scales and Counterfeit Coin Detectors, which is the Bible for collectors of US coin scales and counterfeit coin detectors. It is a comprehensive assemblage of the available published information from a variety of sources. Where can I find out more? What is possible from Australia? I needed to identify and make contact with USA sources. Phone, email, and the internet could be used to identify appropriate USA sources that may be able to supply further detailed information. Those possible sources included other ISAC members, local libraries, museums, historical societies, and ideally, a visit to the original places involved. I wrote a brief article about the 3 Maranville coin testers, which I sent to Isaac, explaining in the covering email that I would like to know more about any Maranville coin testers held in members' collections. The Isaac secretary obliged with an email to all members, and photographic answers from members came quickly. The known Maranville numbers increased. I also started to receive answers from USA authorities, most expressing genuine interest in my project. The Isaac collectors responding seem to have either an 1857 or an 1878 coin tester, but I soon had photographs of my first known 1860. One collector had a box for his 1857, but he doubted the authenticity. Another collector had a blue box for his 1878, but Newman and Malus had described a black box. Then a total surprise. The Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society invited me to apply for an inaugural Newman Numismatic Portal grant. But who were they? I had never heard of the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society, nor the Newman Numismatic Portal. I checked the credibility of both through Washington University at St. Louis before replying directly to the CEO of the Newman Numismatic Portal. The CEO encouraged me to put in an application, and to my complete surprise, I was subsequently awarded one of the 8 inaugural Newman grants. The US $5,000 grant was enough to cover international flights from Australia and about 15 days in USA. We decided that my American-born wife, Elle, should accompany me at our expense so that we could visit family and friends in USA and mix business with pleasure by extending the 15 days in USA. I used the positive opportunities revealed in the email responses from collectors and the various USA authorities to plan a path across America that would visit the most promising opportunities. The route chosen ended up being about 20 business days and about 20 personal days. Please do not try to read all of this slide now. This PowerPoint presentation will become part of the Newman Numismatic Portal. The short summary of this is that we left Melbourne on August 29, 2019, toured USA for 38 days, and returned to Melbourne on October 7, 2019. My email correspondence with the various USA authorities allowed appointments, dates, times to be set in advance. It is a long way across the Pacific Ocean, about 3 times the distance across USA. My wife and I have done the Melbourne to Boston trip 10 times in the last 20 years. I am always a little amused flying for 14 hours and 20 minutes from Melbourne to San Francisco because you arrive before you leave. You gain a day crossing the international date line. The total return journey across the Pacific Ocean was 15,776 miles, and the total return journey across USA was approximately 7,800 miles, for a grand total in excess of 23,500 miles. We entered USA via San Francisco, visited a collector, and took a day trip to Yosemite National Park. We then flew to Chicago and hired a car for trips north and south. A shorter flight took us to the Isaac Museum in Pittsburgh, and a car hire took us to Clinton and Akron, Ohio. We drove Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., visiting Falling Water, Gettysburg, Philadelphia, and Wilmington along the way. We flew to Boston and hired a car to reach Worcester. We flew home via Portland, Oregon, and Los Angeles. San Francisco is one of 3 possible entry points for Australian travellers. This trip offered the opportunity to see a wonderful scales collection, including some Maranvilles. We always try to do something different when we visit family and friends in USA, so this time we booked a day trip to see Yosemite National Park. The San Francisco Isaac member has 2 of each Maranville in his collection. It was the very dark 1860 improved pocket coin tester in the middle of the bottom row that captured my attention. I had not previously seen the appointed agent Charles G. Imlay or Imlay inscription. It is not mentioned in the Newman and Mallis book. There is a more detailed, lighter photograph of the inscription in a later slide. My professional background in education, I was a teacher of geography and mathematics in secondary schools. I lectured in physical geography at Melbourne State College. Geography remains part of my DNA, so my wife and I enjoy seeing different national parks when the opportunity presents. We visited Sausalito during our honeymoon, and it was nice to return on this visit to USA. The view of San Francisco from Sausalito is spectacular. We needed a day to unwind after the long trans-Pacific flight. It was 10 to 15 degrees warmer than normal for that time of the year. We flew out towards Chicago on September 3, 2019. We have touched Route 66 in a number of states during previous trips home to Boston, but we had never visited Lou Mitchell's restaurant and bakery for a meal. We enjoyed an omelette lunch there with Elle's brother, who lives in Chicago. Our bucket list includes the complete journey from Chicago to Santa Monica. We met several collectors in Sycamore at the home of the Isaac editor of Equilibrium, a 136-mile round trip north from Chicago. Another Isaac collector lives in Champaign, a 258-mile round trip south from Chicago. We enjoyed meeting these wonderful, like-minded scales collectors and seeing their Maranvilles. Then a 292-mile round trip north from Chicago to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, where Elle and I met doing postgraduate studies. The Newman and Malus 1999 book says that there are no known boxes for the 1857 coin tester. And yet here we have a blue box with H. Maranville's patented pocket coin detector printed on the box lid. Is it an original box? Note the border of linked stars around the top of the box. You will see the linked stars again later when we get to Philadelphia. Here is the second of the two now known 1860 improved pocket coin testers that has the name of the sole agent Charles G. Imlay with an E inscribed on the brass face. I believe that Maranville spelt the sole agent's name incorrectly. I believe it should read Charles G. Imlay with an A, who was the Secretary of the State Saving Fund in Philadelphia. Maranville lists 20 gold coins and 20 silver coins on the sliding beam of the 1860 improved pocket coin tester, but only lists the expected weight, diameter and thickness for 11 US coins. He did not list the dimensional details for any of the foreign coins. In the patent application, he expected users to have one genuine coin of each kind so that the user could fill in the dimensional details for themselves. I suspect the Civil War interrupted further development. There is no evidence of quantity production. An original blue box for an 1878 appeared from an Isaac member's collection. The directions for use printed on top of the blue box are transcribed in my article on the Newman Numismatic Portal. Newman and Malus describe a black box in their 1999 book, not a blue box. My wife Elle and I are very fond of our time together in graduate school at the University of Wisconsin in 1973-74. I returned to Australia in 1974 after completing a Master of Science in Geography and started work immediately as a secondary teacher of Geography and Mathematics. Elle completed her Masters in Education and took her first job teaching in Racine, Wisconsin. We flew 412 miles from Chicago to Pittsburgh. Mary Ann Murphy is an Isaac Vice President and convener of the Museum Committee. Kurt Bayris and his wife Anne enjoy travelling around USA to collect scale donations from generous donors and deceased estates. Kurt Bayris is now officially the Isaac Member at Large. The display end of the warehouse housing the Isaac collection is beautifully organised in bookshelves, wall racks and display cases. This photograph is taken from the other end of the warehouse where tall storage racks contain the larger items. My wife Elle is reading near the entrance door while I photograph a wonderful variety of scales. The ground level view allows a closer look at the variety of simple kitchen scales held in 3 of the bookcases in the foreground. The glass display cabinets hold smaller scales, including counterfeit coin detectors or CCDs. A special thank you to Mary Ann Murphy, Kurt and Ann Bayris for their knowledge and their hospitality. Then it was off to Clinton, Ohio. Clinton was originally called Savannah when it was laid out in 1816 under the latter name of Savannah. The Tuscarawas River winds through Clinton from north to south. The Ohio and Erie Canal was constructed parallel to the river in 1828 to 1830 to provide for improved transportation of products and passengers. Elevated aqueducts carried the Ohio and Erie Canal over the Tuscarawas River. Clinton is named for the father of the Erie Canal, New York Governor DeWitt Clinton. Canal usage began declining in the 1850s. The canal was damaged beyond repair by flooding in 1913. Today, there is very little evidence left in Clinton of the Ohio and Erie Canal. Founded in 1816, the village of Clinton flourished after the Ohio and Erie Canal opened in 1828. The railroad arrived in 1852. Clinton continued to thrive on both transportation systems until the devastating flood of 1913. We visited the Ohio and Erie Canal south of Clinton at the village of Canal Fulton. The Ohio historical marker explains. The canal was a 308-mile water toll road built between 1825 and 1832 from Lake Erie at Cleveland to the Ohio River at Portsmouth. The early growth of Akron, Massillon and Canal Fulton was due to the canal. Railroads caused its decline and the flood of 1913 destroyed its usefulness. Before canals, Ohio's main form of transportation was by horse and wagon. The Ohio and Erie Canal formed an early shipping route connecting Lake Erie to the Ohio River. This canal system linked Ohio to the rest of the nation. The Ohio and Erie Canal clearly allowed Maranville to have his coin testers made by Charles Staples in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then had them shipped via the canals to Clinton, Ohio for sale. Prior to the Civil War, Maranville owned the house at 7866 Main Street, Clinton, Ohio. Maranville played a major role in the well-travelled underground railroad known as Chestnut Ridge, which ran through heavy woods just to the west. Maranville moved to Akron, Ohio in 1861. In 1874, Pearson Washington Rhodes, himself a Civil War veteran, and his wife Sarah Jane Foltz purchased this home. The Clinton Historical Society have since restored the home as a museum. Clinton is a small village in Summit County in the northeast of Ohio. According to the 2010 census, 1,214 people live in Clinton. The village office staff introduced us to a retired Marine Corps colonel who gave us a wonderful tour of Clinton, Akron and Canal Fulton, including the Maranville family graves. The colonel believes his ancestors probably attended the school with the Maranville children. Harvey Maranville married Nancy Harbaugh on November 1st, 1837. They were the parents of 10 children. This Clinton tombstone marks the grave of a son, Franklin Maranville, a veteran of the Civil War, who returned to Clinton after the Civil War and owned and operated a tin shop on Main Street, Clinton. Descendants of the original Harvey Maranville family have lived in Clinton for a long time. Note the death dates of Alger Maranville in 1977 and Alice Maranville in 1976. They were great-grandchildren of Harvey and Nancy Maranville. The retired Marine Corps colonel took us to the Glendale Cemetery in Akron, Ohio, to see both his family graves and the graves of the Harvey Maranville family. Here are the memorial stones for Harvey and his wife Nancy, also 2 of their 10 children, Esther and Ida. There is more detail of Harvey's memorial stone on the next slide. I wanted to remember and show respect for Harvey Maranville in a relevant way, so I photographed my 1857 coin tester and my 1878 dial coin tester on his memorial stone. I suspect that Harvey handled both of my coin testers in years past, and I would love to know who he sold them to all those years ago. Akron Library produced wonderful documents, including the Maranville obituary published in the Summit County Beacon. It is a summary of his career, his 2 Ohio residences, and his family, including those who served in wars. While living in Clinton, Maranville served as Justice of the Peace of Franklin Township. Moving to Akron in 1861, he was appointed Inspector and Gauger of Distilled and Malt Liquors and Illuminating Oils for Summit County under the United States Internal Revenue System. He was a highly respected public servant for Summit County. The Akron City Directories held at Akron City Library allowed us to trace Samuel D. Stewart, the Akron dentist who shared the patent rights associated with Harvey Maranville's invention of the 1878 dial coin tester. He played a pivotal role in promoting and selling the 1878 dial coin tester to the public. This advertisement listed Stewart and Maranville as proprietors and patentees and invited buyers to send $1 to Post Office Box 1266, Akron, Ohio, so that they could get their own dial coin tester. Stewart and Maranville were clearly in the business venture together. Note, Maranville was 67 years old in this 1879 venture with Stewart. From Akron, Ohio, we returned to Pittsburgh for a couple of days of sightseeing. Our Isaac Collector hosts joined us in a tour of Pittsburgh, including a ride up and down the Duquesne Incline, which gave us a wonderful view of Pittsburgh and the junction of the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers to form the Ohio River. We drove from Pittsburgh to Falling Water at Mill Run. We could not resist the opportunity to see Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, which he designed for the Kaufman family in 1935. We met a Civil War historian and we talked about our planned visit to Gettysburg and General Meade's temporary headquarters on Tawnytown Road. We went to Gettysburg via an Isaac Collector in Bedford, Pennsylvania, who owns multiple Maranville coin testers, both 1857 and 1878, but no 1860. This collector also had an original blue box for an 1878 dial coin tester, but there was still no evidence of the black box mentioned by Newman and Mallis in their 1999 book. My internet searching revealed an article by a metal detecting enthusiast who found an 1857 coin tester while searching a Civil War battlefield in Louisiana. I contacted the metal detecting enthusiast, who explained that he had been searching the Battle of Bayou Bourbeau battlefield in the hope of finding Civil War bullets. Instead, he found a piece of brass that he later identified as an 1857 coin tester. Eyewitness accounts describe paymasters paying the Union soldiers in 1863 at the time of the surprise attack. We had great luck meeting people almost everywhere we travelled, and we learned something about the local history every time. President Lincoln appointed 562 additional paymasters. President Lincoln appointed 562 additional paymasters to handle the task of paying the Union soldiers as they navigated the conflict. When the paymaster arrived in camp, the troops were required to muster and parade by companies. They then received their pay in cash. The Civil War is the central event in America's historical consciousness. While the Revolution of 1776 to 1783 created the United States, the Civil War of 1861 to 1865 determined what kind of nation it would be. The Civil War resolved that USA would be an indivisible nation with a sovereign national government that upheld the declaration that all men were created with an equal right to liberty. Tawnytown, Maryland is just 13 miles south of Gettysburg. At the outbreak of the Civil War, Tawnytown, a community of just 500, sent more than 75 men to battle. During the Gettysburg campaign, thousands of Union soldiers passed through Tawnytown to and from the Gettysburg battle. My 1857 Maranville Coin Tester, serial number 8888, was bought from the estate of a grandfather of a long-time Tawnytown family. I suspect that it probably belonged to a Union paymaster in 1863. From Tawnytown, Maryland, we drove back through Gettysburg to Philadelphia to see an Isaac collector who owns all three Maranville coin testers, 1857, 1860 and 1878. We took some time to see old Philadelphia via a hop-on, hop-off bus tour. Remember, back in Chicago, we saw a previously unknown blue box for the 1857 coin tester. But that blue box had an identical typeface for H. Maranville's patent pocket coin detector and an identical border of linked stars, now shown on a previously unknown brown box. The serial numbers on the underside of the 1857 coin testers suggest that Charles Staples made at least 6 batches of 100 coin testers per batch, and it now seems possible that at least one batch of 100 was put in brown boxes. The drive from Philadelphia down to Washington, DC allowed us to visit a former Isaac vice president in Wilmington who has an established reputation for researching paper ephemera. Newman and Mathias acknowledged his contribution in their 1999 book. We compared notes on some shared interests, but unfortunately, he could add nothing to my current Maranville research. This was my first visit to Washington, DC, and I was determined to see as much as I could. The hop-on, hop-off bus tour allowed us to see all the major Washington sites and take photographs. My wife Elle was a teacher of the deaf in Australia before retirement, so it was very special to have our Washington-based friends show us around Gallaudet University. We were given instructions on how to use the staff entrance at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. The reference librarian for the Trade and Literature collection at the Smithsonian unfortunately came up empty on Maranville material, but he did arrange an introduction into the National Numismatic Collection. The National Numismatic Collection had no Maranvilles, but they did show us two lovely counterfeit coin detectors. Both CCDs are described in the Newman Numismatic 1999 book. The Smithsonian had a lovely original label from the box of the John Allender 6-hole gold coin scale and a lovely original tag for the Merritt Clark coin tester. The history of the canal era in Ohio and how the canals stimulated trade for vast areas of USA was confirmed with the display at the National Museum of American History. Harvey Maranville, a recently trained engineer, saw opportunities in Ohio after the canal was completed in 1832. Maranville settled in Clinton in 1833 and built bridges. I was 20 years old in 1969 when man landed on the moon. A visit to the National Air and Space Museum was a must. In 2009, the Space Museum curators and conservators restored their original LM2 test vehicle to look like LM5, the Eagle of Apollo 11 fame. Please note the angled legs. My wife Elle was born in Boston, went to school in Milton, and did her undergraduate degree at Lesley College in Cambridge. Elle did her postgraduate masters at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I was born and educated in Australia, but I met Elle doing my masters in Wisconsin in 1973-74. Elle is a dual citizen of both her native America and also her adopted Australia. We go home to Boston. Industrial Worcester was the result of inventive genius and forward-thinking entrepreneurs who laid the foundation of a diverse industrial economy after 1825. The Blackstone Canal linked Worcester and Providence in 1828, and the railroads first opened between Worcester and Boston in 1835. The transportation improvements made Worcester a crossroads and offered the opportunity of large-scale precision manufacturing for distant markets. Merrifield was one of those forward-thinking entrepreneurs who provided warehouse premises for young businesses trying to establish themselves and to sell product to distant markets. Charles Staples took advantage of this small business incubator environment to establish his business. Our visit to the American Antiquarian Society in Worcester, Massachusetts, provided wonderful evidence of the importance of Maranville's 1857 invention. His money scale invention earned a front page write-up in the Scientific American dated August 22, 1857. Charles Staples lived locally in Worcester, Massachusetts. We took this photograph of his former home in September 2019. Charles Edwin Staples was buried locally at Hope Cemetery, Worcester, Massachusetts. Like Maranville, Charles Staples lost a son to the Civil War. Charles Staples was a machinist in the Washburn shops before they became part of Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Washburn shops are one of the two original buildings at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which is known more simply as WPI. Staples worked in Worcester in the 1850 to 1865 period. We met the Deputy Director of Archives at WPI and made a most unexpected discovery. We met the Deputy Director of WPI Archives among the typical books and paper files of a typical archives. A long aluminium pipe was leaning on a stand. It seemed out of place in an archives area. The Deputy Director explained that WPI had a long established reputation for precision engineering. He was not surprised that Maranville had sought out Staples to make the 1857 coin tester. Precision engineering was needed to make the finely balanced 1857 coin tester. The Deputy Director then explained that the aluminium pipe is the prototype leg for the Apollo 11 lunar module Eagle. Alan Glazer, a WPI graduate, made all 24 legs for all 6 lunar landing modules. From Maranville to the moon, all from WPI. We try to visit different places, entering and leaving USA, and we had never been to Portland, Oregon before. I couldn't resist this photograph out of the plane window. We settled in for the short 2,537-mile flight from Boston to Portland. Very satisfied with our research on the Maranville coin testers and the American history that we had learned along the way. Just when we thought it was safe to take a break from scales, some red scales jumped out in front of us in Portland, Oregon. Thomas, Kuhn and Frost use the red scales of justice as a logo for their legal business. The 3 nights in Portland provided a break before our long trip home, all 24 hours and 40 minutes of it. We lost Sunday, October 6, 2019 to the international dateline, but 8,755 miles later, we were back in Melbourne, Australia. Sincere thanks to the Eric P. Newman Numismatic Education Society for a wonderful life opportunity. The final picture of the now known Maranville coin testers. 39 surviving examples of the 1857 coin tester, 5 surviving prototypes of the 1860 improved pocket coin tester, and 34 surviving examples of the 1878 dial coin tester. There are at least 6 original boxes previously unknown to Newman and Malus in 1999. The different positions of the twin serial numbers on the underside of the 1857 coin tester suggest Staples made at least 6 batches of 100 examples of the 1857 coin testers for a total of 600. The similar survival rate of the 1878 suggests that production of the 1878 was about the same, perhaps also 600 examples. Please visit the 3 Maranville papers on the Newman Numismatic Portal for the photographic census of the known Maranville coin testers. A simple Google search of Newman Maranville Mathias will get you to the correct Newman portal link. I'm happy to hear from anybody wishing to add to the Harvey Maranville Coin Tester story, particularly if you own an unknown example and you're willing to send photographs of both top and underside. Many thanks for joining me today. Are there any questions that you would like to ask now?
Yes, wonderful presentation. Let's go ahead and use this time. Feel free to use the Q&A to submit any questions that you have, and we can answer those. First one is not a question, but a post from Zach saying, very enjoyable presentation. I can't agree more.
Thank you.
Learned quite a bit. First up, this one is from Steve. Can you tell what batch the scale came from using the number under the dial?
No, you can't tell which batch. All I've been able to do is to identify that there were different batches because obviously they were put in different positions, but I have no idea of which position came first, which position came second, third, fourth, or fifth.
Absolutely. Bruce Burton following up. No questions, great presentation. I have now got a list of new places to visit here in the USA. And so I actually had a question in regards to that. Are there any places you'd look to return to from this trip?
I'd return virtually everywhere we went, but unfortunately, time distance doesn't allow. We're keener to try and go to places that we haven't been. Our life ambition is to try and spend a week in every state at some point in time, and we're probably about halfway through that process at the moment.
Oh, wow. What would be next on the list?
Want to go south. We've got friends in Texas that we've promised to visit, and I've never ever been to New Orleans.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Here we are. Will you ever expand into other types or brands of CCDs?
Simple answer is yes. But the difficulty always with any collecting, be it coin collecting or scale collecting, is getting enough examples to be able to start and work with the differences to try and get the explanations. I'm aware that the Vice President of the ISAC organisation is going to give a talk at 3 p.m. on some of the early Allender CCDs. So it would be one group that would be well worth having a look at, because there are a known number of different ones of the Allanders apart from the two commonly known ones. There are others. The Fairbanks scale is another one that comes in probably at least 7 or 8 different varieties. I've started to try and research those 7 or 8.
Once again, another compliment from Michael S. Foster. Great job and presentation, Matthias.
Thank you, Michael.
Here we go. Let's see. Are there any CCDs made in Australia? This is coming from Don.
Not that I'm aware of. Australia is very much under the influence both in colonial days and modern days in terms of importing from both England and America. So we have in Australia some of the early sovereign scales that came in from England. Sovereigns were part of early currency in Australia, but have dropped out. But no, I'm not aware of any specifically Australian CCD for detecting differences in Australian coins. I think probably because most of our coinage is of relatively cheap metals, and most of the CCDs seem to be to do with either pure gold, pure silver coins, and making sure that the value is in the coin by the weight, thickness, diameter, etc.
Absolutely. And in a similar vein, Steve asks, have you researched CCD from other countries, just in general?
No, not as yet, but I'm still young.
Absolutely. All right, and I think we'll take this one last question. Actually, I believe that will. All right, I believe that will do it for us today. Thanks again.
But before people leave, can I have perhaps some indication of how many people are watching that would classify themselves as scale collectors rather than numismatists?
Ooh.
So hand up if you're a scale collector first.
Taking a look, let's see. Looks like a solid 10% of the crowd today raising their hands.
Righto. Then a hand up if you classify yourself as a numismatist first.
Oh, wow, numbers shooting up and looking at a solid third of those attending today.
Interesting. In that case, I say thank you very much to the numismatists in particular, because I thought I would have a scales following rather than a numismatic following.
Oh, well, there you go. Thanks again for providing a presentation to entertain both groups, and just so informative. Once again, you can use the information on the screen if you have information regarding these for Mathias, and that will conclude our session for the day. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Matthew.